Hi, and welcome to Quality Intelligence Food Safety. I'm Colleen Thornton, your host. In today's episode, we're going to talk about practical AI and tools for food safety and quality with Jacob Minnich from Skidmore Sales. Let's listen in and see all the good things he's got to talk about.
There's always an overarching limitation to software, especially off-the-shelf software, in that you don't know exactly how it runs. And so with AI, it's a huge problem because you don't know what the system prompt is. So when you ask the AI a question, what gets fed to the LLM is both your prompt and the system prompt.
Okay,
you don't
just
know
a second, real quick. What LLM? Please define LLM for because we have a whole wide range of people. People know your stuff, and people who are not very computer literate like me. I mean, I'm computer literate, but I'm a user only, right? But I want to know more. So can you break it down for me for what are these models and what do they mean and that kind of thing. Sure. So we get to that other stuff.
Yep. So whenever I talk about AI, I'm typically referring to an LLM, which is a large language model. A large language model is basically a mathematical model of language. That's kind of the simplest term for it. It might not be the best way to describe it, but you can take language, and if you train a machine learning model with enough language, you can get it to essentially predict the outcome of a piece of text. So if I were to feed it part of a sentence, it can predict what the next words are based on its training, based on the words.
So like when it tries to rewrite your email for you.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's doing. It's reading your it's reading the information that you give it, and then whatever prompt you give it, and then it is essentially doing math on words, is the way I like to describe it.
Statistically, this word would come up most often.
Yeah, the next word, the next statistically most likely word to come after this word or phrase is this word. And it does. That's what the GPT stands for in ChatGPT. Is I think it's generative pretext transformer. So it predicts the next word based on the previous word.
Okay, but that prediction can come up with some really interesting outcomes. We'll show some stuff in the graphics here in a minute. But
yeah, and that's the reason you have to verify and you have to validate. And, just going back to software in general, verification and validation, one of the things that you and I've noticed in working together is that, GFSI standards are written for the compliance with the things that you can touch and feel and see. And it's not really written for, it's written for, 15, 20 years ago when a lot of this stuff was paper-based and the only thing that was electronic was the system that kept your extruder, at temperature. It's not designed for, how we're handling and we're parsing and we're transforming all of this data that's coming out of our systems and what we're using to make food safety decisions. And I'm surprised that it hasn't happened yet. Maybe it'll happen in SQF 10, but I'm surprised that there hasn't been an edition yet that talks about electronic data systems. And
I am too. And last I heard, I have a couple of clients that were working in some of the working groups, and they specifically asked about that because, as you know, I actually have a process that I do as kind of a value add. It does go back to the code. Would never write a nonconformance that wasn't part of the code, but there are validation and verifications of many of these systems that really desperately need to be done on a food safety standpoint. Traceability comes to mind. Allergens. What else? What other things we have? Like time and temperature, calibrations, sensors, and just about anything in the maintenance side of things, anything on calibration, inspection and analysis, all your lab stuff, all of these things have systems. Are those systems traceable? Are they manageable? Have you checked them? Are they checked on the right data? Is the raw data good? Is the buffer data good? I mean, it is amazing the kinds of things that we see as we go along, and the amount of information that a quality manager right now has to deal with is unbelievably overwhelming. And it is very hard from a human perspective to try to keep track of all of that all the time, along with every meeting, every other thing. And then, oh, by the way, we have families, we have, don't even talk about life balance, right? So we have to have these systems in place that allow us to breathe. Like, this is my whole thing, is a livable food safety system. But how do we know those systems are doing what they're supposed to do? And that's where we're really struggling. And so when I have time on an audit, I will go into some of those types of things. And I am finding issues with traceability systems. It especially comes up in rework a lot. I've had, I don't know how many sites have had allergen concerns. There's the data and the situations that we see for, I unfortunately have to write issues for supplier approvals. And most of it's could it be done by a person? Sure. If you want to have 20 people doing things, and that's just, the resources just generally aren't there for that type of stuff. Talk to us about your experience at Skidmore and how validation verification of these systems works for you. How is it structured? What's your process? Those kinds of things. Tell us what you can about those things.
Yeah. So the longer that I've done this, the more that I have been convinced that, and I say this now slightly tongue in cheek, but that your quality manager should know how to write code. And what I mean by that is you need to understand how your systems are connected and how the data moves between them and what happens to the data so that you can understand how things can go wrong. And when they do go wrong, how you can fix it.
So let me just kind of put a note on that, though. Not everybody's going to be automation savvy like you are. So for those people who aren't, then there needs to be somebody in the organization or a consultant that can help do some of those things, right? That's what you're saying, is we have to be data savvy.
Yeah, that's the key piece, is that, you need to either be able to do it yourself, or you need to have someone who understands both the software side of it and enough of your specifics to make the connection. Like we have a really, really good IT guy that does all of our SQL database stuff. And he came out of operations. And so he understands the operation side of it. And so when I take something to him and I say, hey, this isn't working the way that it's supposed to, it's doing this and this, he can immediately go into it and say, oh, okay, I know exactly what's going on. And those are the people that are hard to find. It's really
important to have people to know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're hard to find. And the biggest, cost-effective piece in an organization is building those people up. Finding people who have a knack for technology, that work in operations, that you can start to introduce them to the technology side of it and move them more that way. Technology is not going to get less. We're going to get more and more ingrained in software. AI is going to take over more and more of the, data crunching of all of this. I don't think it's going to take people's jobs, but it's going to change the way that we work. It already has.
Right. So we have so much data. We have, and we're collecting sometimes data for data's sake, right? And that needs to go away, first of all. If we're really doing based on risk, which, everybody wants to say we're based on risk, and let's hope we are, and not so much the check the box thing that seems to keep plaguing us. But if we're really based on risk, then we should be focusing our data based on that. But because we've been building data based on check the box, finding what data is needed and appropriate and useful for decision making is kind of a mess. It's like forest for the trees kind of question. Is just too much data. Most of it doesn't matter. And the ones that do matter may be spread out over a year, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. And we haven't collected that and been able to collate it and use it and show some statistical trending or things of that nature. And that becomes a problem. But I think I wanted to pull out a point that you had talked about developing the people that have knacks for IT or automation. Think about you didn't come from an automation, from an IT background. The gentleman that you're talking about didn't come from an IT background. And I think it makes a lot of sense. I see this very successful crossover a lot, whether it be from operations to food safety and quality, from quality to operations, and also from building up these young guys or girls who just have a knack for computers and how things work, and they may not have the degree behind them. They may not, but they get it. They just get it, right? I think we're in a whole new era of it's more about skills, whether it be people skills, computer skills, understanding systems. Because, we used to be the check the box folks, and now we really just need to be understanding the whole system. And one set of people don't necessarily move to another set of people very well. People are just kind of naturally system people, or they're naturally check the same thing every time the same way, which we want those people. I mean, you can't do manufacturing well without having people who care about doing it right the same way every time. And it becomes an art form. We've kind of scienced out everything. And now it's an art form to be able to do, because when those tweaks and weird things happen, because unfortunately food is generally from a nature-based item, which means that, your moisture is going to be different. It's going to be a different crop year. It's and all of these things. As much as we try to standardize all of that, if it was that easy to standardize, most of us wouldn't have jobs. So,
right. Right.
Trying to build these people up because they're really good at what they do, and finding those gems, if they happen to be the janitor, but they know how to do these things, is a great opportunity for our manufacturing sites, because I see the people who they've built up from internally. They've organically built these people up. Those are your most loyal. They're the most engaged. They usually know the most about your systems and can help you fix things if there's something that goes wrong, or find them before they do go wrong. So that's a big point, and I wanted to bring that out for what you were saying there. So tell us about what the difference is between AI and machine learning. I don't understand that.
Yeah, so AI is machine learning. Machine learning takes a lot of different forms. And the most popular form now is artificial intelligence. The artificial intelligence, I think, is just a moniker for machine learning that does a thing that is typically more human-based, like data manipulation or language processing is a big one. I don't know a lot about machine learning. I'll be honest. The majority of my focus is on large language models. And so I know about it at that surface level. I'm not a machine learning expert by any means, but you can train a model to do just about anything if you can feed it enough data. So and
do some prediction.
Yeah. So but what's become so popular, and it's become so popular because it took so long for us to figure out how to do, is machine learning on language. Now that we can basically feed words to a computer and have it do math on words, that's revolutionary. You can feed it a whole chunk of text and ask it for specific things, and it can compute an output that's human readable, that's not numbers. That's a revolutionary thing.
That's cool. Yeah, that is really cool. So what do you think the best, easiest implementation options are for small to medium sites? What do you think the strengths, so to speak, of kind of what you do and the types of things that you're using have? What are the weaknesses? What are our opportunities, and what are our threats?
Yeah, I mean, so my advice is just start looking for what's out there. I mean, most people probably use a Google Chrome for their internet browser. And if they're signed in on a Google account, it's going to start recommending things to them based on what they search. So the way that I've learned so much about this is basically just by Google searching things. I'll start searching for free AI software that does this specific thing. It'll do voice transcription, or it'll do document analysis, or anything like that. And then the more that I look for those things, the more projects I find that are really useful. Like one that I just recently found is called Vibe. It uses OpenAI's open source model called Whisper, which is a real-time voice transcription. You can use Vibe to transcribe all of your meetings, and then you can take the text from that meeting and you can drop it into Notebook, for example, Google's product that allows you to chat with documents and generate summaries. You can drop that meeting transcript into Notebook, and in about 15 seconds, you can start asking questions about the meeting and asking, summarize all the, to-dos from this meeting. What were the key points? What kind of takeaways do we have? What should be the follow-up for the next meeting? And it'll give you all of that. And those two things are free. They don't cost anything.
So that could be used in what? Meeting management review, kappa processes, anything that could potentially move the dial, maybe product development type items, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And as AI becomes more and more ingrained in everything that we do, I mean, it's in your browser search now. It's in pretty much every product that you use. Like the screen that I'm looking at when I'm talking to you, it has an AI companion button at the bottom. It's in everything. And so all of these tools, you basically have to just play with them and identify what they're able to do and what they're not able to do. And you have to take it with a measure of caution, because you don't want to,
caution,
you don't want to rely on a tool that is not going to give you the same output every time.
Got it.
That's one of the hallmarks. I wouldn't say it's a hallmark, but that's one of the things about large language models, is that they're not always going to give you the same output, because the input can be so different. If you give it the exact same input and you have the settings tweaked appropriately, it'll give you the exact same output. But it's pretty unlikely that you're going to get the same output every time. And that can be a good thing if you are just using it to do the heavy lifting, and then you're reviewing what it puts out, and then you are building your SQF meeting notes or to-do items or what have you from that.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is, from a strength perspective, using it to take some of the clerical work out of your job, because we all know that there's too much clerical work in our job, and that's not a good use of your time. You could have that time back on the floor and spend a significant amount of time on the floor where you can prevent recalls, prevent situations, and then hopefully have built in enough time using all that clerical administrative help, so that you can actually go home at a decent hour and be able to have a life too, right? Thank you, Jacob. That was great. We look forward to hearing more from you in our third episode for this series on training, culture, and the risks and governance side of AI. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute consulting, legal, or professional advice. We invite you to like, subscribe, and share. You can find more information and additional resources at heavensentfoodsafety.com. Join us next time for another episode of Quality Intelligence Food Safety.